I'm going to talk about tonight is I'm going to be talking about a lot about uncovering cash flow. So different parts of the property journey or the structure of the property. It's quite important to make sure you get it all right. Otherwise, you could be, costing you money you don't have to cost. So the biggest thing is about uncovering some hidden cash flow in your portfolio. A lot of people that I meet, I wouldn't say they've got it structured wrong, but they could just be a little bit more efficient with the way they structure their portfolio, guys. But before we get started too much, it was good to hear the Reserve Bank today. They announced today that they've left the cash rate on hold, which is good. Hopefully the banks follow suit and don't do too much silly things with that. But they did mention actually in the comments on the Reserve Bank that they were looking at trying to potentially keep rates low for the next 3 years, which I think is a little bit ridiculous. But I don't believe that'll come into effect in 3 years. I think it'll be a lot sooner than that. So that's just the nerdy economists that just never seem to get everything right. So guys, thanks for coming along tonight. Tonight I'm going to talk about just some cash flow style things. Now I'm going to share with you guys a spreadsheet that I use on a regular basis to analyze different properties, different costings, etc. Next week I'm going to be discussing a full case study. One of my 15-minute calls that we regularly do just to have a look at someone's scenario just quickly. What was interesting was with that scenario, it was a really good case study. So I didn't have enough time to get it ready for tonight. I'd already planned to go through this tonight, but next week we're going to go through a case study I spoke with this guy and he thought he was nowhere near being able to buy investment properties. It's quite simple. And he was quite shocked actually by the outcome after that 15 minutes and then scheduled obviously a call after that. But all right, so guys, bear with me. I'm just going to change a couple of things. All right. So feel free to say, g'day Corey, g'day Leanne, Jess, you're watching as well. Fantastic stuff. I hope you're all getting ready for good old Santa Claus coming along. It's that time of year again. So guys, let me get through this for you. So, all right. So for those of you who are watching now, and for those of you who might watch it a bit later on, what I'm planning on going through here is just my analyzing software, which helps me work out what properties are good for me, what properties are good for clients and their portfolios, but also helps me work out some costings just to work it backwards on what you can and can't do. Now, guys, just put in the comments here, if that's okay, if you've seen this program before. Some of you probably have if you're existing customers of mine. So this is quite interesting to see what you can do. But let's go through it, guys, and just see what we can come up with for you. So what we've got is we've got the property value. That's quite simple here. So I'm going to go through this bit by bit, and feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Put them in the comments. I can see the comments here, so whack them in the comments for me. And I'd love answering questions. It's one of my favorite parts of helping people. So this spreadsheet is basically very similar to say like a profit and loss you might find within your tax return. It's a very simple spreadsheet, and we use this a lot. So across down this area here is where we put all our costings in place, all our expenses, all our income. And then across the top here, of course, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10. And now the bottom here is what it's going to cost you per week if this is the style of property you're going to buy. Now, this, for example, is just a traditional 4-bedroom house and land. It's nothing fancy, but I am going to show you after this. I'm just going to quickly show you a dual income property and then also a cash flow house. So they're the 3 separate structures we put in place for our clients. So I like to take you through all of them just so you can see what's out there and how it all works. But that's after we've uncovered a bit of cash flow here. A lot of people don't know there's just a lot of small things you can put in place. So if you're going out today to buy a property, say for example, you're quite simple, you pay $550,000. It's quite simple there. With your purchase cost, so I'm not sure. Now, if you're on a phone, you might not be able to see these smaller screens. So you may have to zoom in, sorry guys, but let's just do the best we can. An iPad or a computer will definitely be better if you can for this one. So if you do miss a few things, just go back to your iPad or your computer and just rewatch up to where you want to be. Okay, so 550. So you've got stamp duty. Quite simple. You've got stamp duty to the government, whether it's New South Wales, Queensland, whatever, they're going to take stamp duty from you. The best way to avoid some stamp duty, if you're buying a new property, is buying like a house and land package, for example, is to buy the land separate to the house. So if you buy the house as a whole one contract, you'll pay stamp duty on that whole contract of $550. But if you were to pay, say, $250 for the land and then $300,000 for the construction of the house, you're only going to pay stamp duty on the land portion. So that's one area where we save a lot of money when building house and land packages, is you save a lot in just the stamp duty. Straight up, you'll probably save around $12,000 to $13,000 there, because you're only going to pay stamp duty on the land value of $250,000. That's just one area straight away where we save a fortune. So 550, we've got stamp. I'm going to leave the stamp duty in there. Sorry, guys, for this. So just want to work on worst case scenario figures. So your purchase cost, 22,000. So what it is here, you'll see your loan amount. Now, if, for example, you've got equity in your own home, you're not putting a deposit down at all into an investment purchase, this is how it would look. So basically what you're doing is you're borrowing around about 105%. If you've got equity, the bank, and of course income, the bank will allow you to do that, which is perfect. Okay, so we've got 550 loan, purchase cost, which is that stamp duty money and conveyancing costs. Then you've got loan costs. So you've got establishment fees, mortgage solicitors fees, valuation fees, registration of your mortgages, etc., etc. Now, where you save a fair bit of money in here is it's very important that you go with a bank that doesn't charge you the $700. And a lot of the bigger banks don't actually charge the $400 for solicitors fees or the valuation fees, especially if you have a packaged loan. So a packaged loan is where you might get charged one fee per year, like an annual fee. And then you won't get any of these other fees included. But of course, registration of your mortgage, you will pay. That's a government charge. You can't escape that whatsoever. And normally it's a bit of search fees, and I always allow an extra $500 in here just in case you need it. So in this scenario here, you're probably only going to spend about $500, if less, but depends on how many properties you've got. So if you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 in your portfolio, you'll pay this registration of your mortgage for each one. So that will add up if you've got more in the portfolio. And I've also put in here a little additional loan. Now, this additional loan is just like a buffer. And with that buffer, it just allows, just in case there's any hidden costs that pop up through the transaction, you have to be ready for some small things to pop up. So that's there as well. And of course, your total loan amount here is $576,000. So in fact, if you bought the property for $550 and it was worth $550, you currently start out with a little bit of negative equity. But that's why with building, if you did a house land package, you will normally get a little bit of equity uplift through that period, and you won't have this negative equity position, which is what we try and do every time. And then you've got, of course, capital growth rate. I won't worry about that tonight because we're not dictating on certain areas. But inflation. Now, inflation is an area where people lose. Say, for example, you've got your old school mum and dad, grandparents, they're retired, they've got 100 grand in the bank at 70, but when they're 80, that 100 grand's worthless because of the inflation rate keeps popping up. So when you're putting these in place, you want to make sure you do have inflation as part of your figures that you're putting together, because $1 today is not worth $1 tomorrow. So at the moment, inflation rate's not that high. So what the Reserve Bank said today, until we get that inflation rate into a scenario where we've got strong inflation, which is 2 to 3%, they're not planning on moving interest rates. I think they'll find that 2 to 3% will come in quite early next year, and they'll probably change their mind by the end of next year. That's why we're doing a lot of fixed rates for our clients at the moment. So for a 550 purchase, you should get over 500 a week rent. But down here, you're going to see here, for example, I've only put in 470. Overquoting rent is probably the biggest mistake you can make. Sorry, I'm just going to go back for a sec. Inflation. Inflation is an uncovered cost. Inflation is a cost. So you've got to be careful of inflation and make sure you keep up with inflation with all the numbers you do. That's what I was trying to get to there. Now, rent, I've only got here 470. Always be conservative with your rent when doing up all your numbers, because sometimes things happen and you can't get that rent that you're after. So having there, or in some cases, like I do in here, I actually put in a vacancy rate. I can put in a vacancy rate as well. So I'm quite conservative when it comes to rent. One of the biggest mistakes I see happen in the marketplace, and this is no offense to real estate agents, but some sales agents really don't know what the rent figure is on the property. They quote you a rent of say $550 to be able to sell you the house or whatever it might be, and being not a property manager as such, they've overpriced the rent. So you can try and achieve $550, but it's just going to sit there vacant, costing you an arm and a leg. So you want to be realistic with your rent, but we're so lucky nowadays in this 21st century, we have this thing called the internet, realestate.com.au, domain.com.au, all that can give us all the answers we need, just to do a rough summary for ourselves. So $550,000, $470 a week in rent. Now, with what we've done here, now I've done an interest rate of 5%. That's quite high in this marketplace we're in at the moment. And I will come back and change that, but I just wanted to leave it there for what we're doing now. And then you got your rental expenses. So when it comes to agents commission, for example, you want to make sure you allow for all the agents commission, letting fees, rates, and insurance. You want to make sure you got your landlord's insurance in place as well as your rates. Like at the present moment, it's a little bit harder to get landlord's insurance to cover loss of rent, but that's also going to come back shortly. But loss of rent's not a big deal with landlord's insurance. Landlord's insurance isn't a huge insurance that's claimed upon, even though if you do watch a current affair, they will probably say the opposite. All right, so I've got insurance in this, all your costings. So it's very important in here that you allow for all these costings, because if you don't, it's going to hurt you. You're not going to be quite ready for it, and all your numbers are going to be completely wrong. All right, so it's interest, it's rental expenses. Now, this is the big part. This is a big part of where you can save and uncover some of your costs. And for those of you who don't know about depreciation is such a huge factor when it comes to Australia. Like depreciation is huge. Like at the moment, for example, if you own your own business and you buy any assets, it could be car, truck, or whatever, up to $150,000, you can depreciate that car in this financial year. So as long as you buy this financial year and the government doesn't change any rules between now and then, you can actually buy a $149,999 car and claim every single dollar against the taxable income of your company. That's 100% depreciated in year one. Now that's not normal. That's just to try and push the economy after this COVID-19 pandemic we've been through. But with property, for example, you've got this depreciation. So there's two types of depreciation. You've got depreciation on your building, which is 2.5%. Now your building's more like your raw construction costs, not really fixtures and fittings as such. But see here in year one, it's $6,800 worth of tax deductions. And then you've got your fixtures and fittings. Now, depending on what style of property you buy, and if it's brand new or not. Now, guys, you have to know this. Depreciation changes if the property is 1 day old. All right. So a brand new property is fully claimable for depreciation. If you have a property 1 day old or more, a lot of these features and fittings you can't claim. So unless you physically paid for them yourself and you installed them yourself. So if you bought a secondhand property and you put in carpets, you put in curtains, you put in fans, for example, you can depreciate that. But if you bought the property already with that in place, you can't depreciate that or claim that against any rental income you've got coming in. So that's a massive factor when coming towards doing what you're doing that you want to make sure is right. Now, depreciation is huge. So for example, here in this little section here, we've got just over $12,000 worth of depreciation. Now, a lot of people will say to me, Wayne, I can go out, buy an older place and spend $12,000 in repairs and I can claim the same money. That's true, but you've got to outlay $12,000. So that's a huge uncovered cost here, especially when I show you a couple of spreadsheets later, how important depreciation is with some people's portfolios. So depreciation is a huge one when it comes to looking at property. So whether you've got old property in your portfolio or new property in your portfolio, you do want to make sure you have depreciation. So the best way to uncover this tax deductible item is if you buy a property, doesn't matter how old it is, you've got to get a quantity surveyor to go out and survey the cost of what you could possibly depreciate. The reports cost anywhere from $500 to $700, and most depreciation companies will not charge you if they can't get enough depreciation out of your property to make it worth your time. So depreciation, whether it's brand new, secondhand, whatever, make sure you get the quantity surveyor's report. That'll make a huge difference to uncovering some of your costs, and also saving tax on your rental income on there as well. So then I've got your loan costs in here again, which I showed you guys before. Now, this is another area here. This isn't necessarily uncovering a cost, but it's all about structure, which at the end of the day, it's about return on investment, which is uncovering costs. So say, for example, here, this is the common sort of scenario. We've bought this property here, $550,000, getting $470 a week rent at a 5% interest rate. Now, with this one, I've got it structured currently 50% ownership. Now, you'll see down here. So I'm going to take you through. You've got rent here, $24,000 odd, but then you've got your expenses, $28,000 and just under $5,000 for all your other rental expenses. So on paper, you're in a negative position by $9,319. So this is what we call negative geared. This is a negative geared investment property. Now, once you claim all your depreciation and any shortfall against your taxable income, this person, for example, is eligible for around $7,500 tax back, which brings the cost of the property down to $35 a week. Now, this is not a bad outcome, but you've got to outlay the $9,000 throughout the year. That's why we always have a cash flow property offsetting your growth property, so that this $9,000 is basically eaten up with the cash flow of your cash flow property. So, but this property here, oops, wrong screen. This property here is owned in a 50% ownership. Now, if the wife or the husband was on the higher income earner, so in this scenario, I've got someone working full-time on 100 and someone working part-time on 25. Now, so a good accountant, now this is just general information. Remember that, guys. Don't go out and do this tomorrow, get advice. But if you get the right accountant and they would probably suggest you to put it either 100% the higher income earner's name, but I always go for 95 or 99. And the only real reason for that is for privacy. So say, for example, your wife's the bigger income earner and you're at home, stay-at-home dad and looking after the kids, but you're the one that handles all the bills. You want to make sure if you have a problem with your council rates or your strata or whatever, that you can physically call up and speak to people. If it's in the other person's name, most times you will not be able to get through and discuss any scenarios or your utilities. So that's very important. And with changing that, we've changed it from costing, almost $2,000 a year, like $35 a week, down into slightly cash positive of about, so basically break even. So what we've done there is just by changing that ownership, we've actually saved you around $1,500 per year. So that's, to me, is important. That's $1,500 you don't have to find ever again, simply because you're getting it back on tax to make it all work for you. So that's just with your traditional style house and land style structure. The biggest things that we uncover here is ownership, depreciation, and just all your hidden little fees you might come up with as well along the way. You want to make sure, especially with loan costs with banks, you normally can pay a lot there if you use the wrong lender. So make sure when you're speaking with your mortgage broker or your banker that they just break down for you all those little fees that can add up, and you use a lender that doesn't charge them. There's a lot of banks out there at the moment offering cashback deals. Be careful not to get caught up in that if their fees are high. Look at the big picture. Just look at the whole thing. All right, guys. So that's just uncovering costs in the basic house and land style package. So what here, now at the moment, interest rates, you're probably looking at around, I'm just going to use 3.5, but for investment, you can get under 3 with some banks, but we're just going to leave it at 3.5%. And what you find, interest rates very important to uncovering some costs there too. So interest rate shouldn't be the be all and end all of which bank you choose, but it has to be up there. It has to be a high priority when choosing your bank. So if you got here 3.5 as a great example, you have rent of $24,500 coming in here. Then you've got your interest, which is $20,000 odd. You've got your rental expenses of $4,933. So what we call your pre-tax cash flow is negative $671. So that's over a year. So what's that? 10 bucks, 12 bucks a week. That's nothing. If you can't afford 12 bucks a week, you've got problems. You need to get a better job. You need to handle your cash flow better. So in this scenario, this house and land package, for example, really is costing nothing. But then you've got the added benefit. So the added benefit here of this depreciation being a house and land, that depreciation is on paper is a loss. So therefore, you're able to take that against your personal income and then get some more tax back come the end of the year. So throughout the year, this, for example, costs you nothing. Now, this is a brand new property, remember. A second-hand property won't be so high with depreciation. So the first half, where we get to pre-tax cash flow here, where it's basically a break even, a second-hand property would be the same. But a brand new one, you're going to get this other depreciation here, which you claim against your income. And therefore, in this scenario here, you're going to get around, what I've got here, $5,876. Oops, about that. Yeah, $5,876 back in tax come the end of the year, because you're going to go to one of the best accountants on the marketplace, which means dollar for dollar. So each accountant, when you do your tax return, they should be able to tell you, okay, you've got your expenses you might claim against your, if you're a nurse, you might claim some shoes and whatnot. If you're construction, you might claim on some tools. Now, that set aside, your accountant should be able to work out for you dollar for dollar what your investment portfolio was costing. They can work it out for you dollar for dollar per property, or just your whole portfolio if you've got more than one property. So in this scenario, just for this one property, you've got $5,200 worth of tax back. So tax back here, $5,200, which is around, as you would expect, around $100 a week. So the property dollar for dollar cost you $671, and it gives you $5,000 back in tax. So for me, that's perfect. That's basically a break-even growth property, and that's with a conservative rent at this low interest rate environment we're seeing at the moment. So a big part is the low interest rates we're seeing at the present time. It's a really good time, if you're up for it, to either move house. So that could be move your home base. I'm a big one in making sure you're living in a home you want to be in. And then, of course, if you can, build your portfolio. This is a perfect time to be adding properties to your portfolio. Not that there's ever a wrong time. There's just different times you should and shouldn't do it. And so there's different times with what style of property you should buy, would be the best way of saying it. All right, so that's what we call a house and land. It's a traditional house and land. But while I've got you guys, I just want to show you how this impacts a dual income property, but also a cash flow house. So when it comes to a dual income property, I'll just bring this up. Now, I hope you guys can see this. I'm just going to wait a few seconds, guys, just to make sure it all converts. I've got about an 8-second delay on the live that I'm seeing. Bear with me 2 seconds. Okay, we're right. All right. So with this $600,000 property, this is a dual income property. So for those of you who do know, that's basically two incomes. So you could be a house and granny flat. You could be a dual key where you've got two properties under the one roof. But in this scenario, I'm not going to go through each individual figure with you again, but you've got a $600,000 property here. Then with something like this, you're going to get around about $790 in rent. So it's huge rental income. So your income for rent is around $41,000. Now with the interest, you've only got about $22,000 in interest, but then you've got your property expenses here as well. So you've got to make sure you allow for everything. So you've got $22,000 worth of interest, $6,000 for property expenses. So once you deduct all that, this pre-tax cash flow here is $12,722. So what that basically means is this property is running at a positive geared. So the last property I showed you initially was a negative geared property, but this is what we call a positive cash flow or a positive geared property. Now with this one, a lot of people will say, well, Wayne, I've got $12,700 in income. It's just going to give me more tax. I'm going to have to pay more income tax. But if it's structured right, you won't. So if this is again, of course, we do focus very heavily here at Property Black on newish style properties for the depreciation benefits. But that $12,000 now, because it's a dual income property, it's got 3 bathrooms, it's got a lot more fixtures and fittings. You've got more depreciation here. So this one has around about, about 16 grand. So you've got $12,000 worth of income. but you're not going to pay tax on that income because you've got about $16,000 worth of paper deductions. It's that word depreciation. That's such a massive thing to have within your portfolio. Even if you're self-employed, you've got to have depreciation so you're not paying too much tax. So 12 grand income, less this depreciation of 16, you're not going to pay tax. So you actually still get a tax credit of $1,600 come the end of the financial year. So depreciation plays a huge factor when trying to keep your portfolio running at a very low cost. And therefore you've got about 14 grand, just with this property as an example, is about $14,000 worth of cash flow that you can add to either A, your other properties within your portfolio, or B, start paying off your home. It doesn't matter where you put it, as long as you put it to something good. That's a big one for me. So guys, feel free as we go through here to ask questions too, guys, by the way. Some of you guys are a bit shy, but feel free to throw some questions out there. Now, just going through this one here. So say, for example, I did a 15-minute call with someone again last week, and we found, what was it? It's right up in the box. It's about just under 5 grand worth of depreciation they never had by doing a quantity surveyor's report. Now that's going to make a huge difference come their tax return, and they're going to go back and amend their tax return for the last couple of years as well, which you can do. I don't know how many years you can do it for, but you can amend tax returns. It will cost you, but if the depreciation or the tax benefit's there, it's fine as long as you're going to win. So that's what we call a dual income property. This is where, so about a house and land, a dual income property. Now I'm just going to show you a cash flow house here as well. So a cash flow house is basically a house and land set up just for cash flow. That's all it's for. And with this style of house and land, you will get growth as well, just like you would a normal house and land, but it's a different product that you build. So what you've got here is it's always a little bit more expensive. So a cash flow house will probably, in this scenario, cost you around $570,000. Now, your purchase costs are made up of many things. You've got your stamp duty again, you get a furniture package, you've got conveyancing costs. So you're going to borrow, if you borrow the whole lot, around $610,000, right? So 570, $610,000. And then what you end up with is with the rent on something like this, it's very high. It's very high. It's about $1,150. So that's massive. That's huge rent coming in. And you don't need many of these cash flow houses to live a comfortable lifestyle either. So that's what people don't understand. Retiring from property is not difficult. It's about what comfort levels you would like to put in place to make sure that you enjoy the process. So with a cash flow property, it's got a higher rent at $1,150 per week. You still got your interest rate at 3.5 or less, but the expenses are higher. So it does cost you around about $11,500 to run this. But just remember, you've got huge cash flow. So you got almost $60,000 in cash flow, less $21,000 on interest and $11,000 for rental expenses. What we call your pre-tax cash flow is around $26,000. So that's around $500 a week is what does, about $500 per week. That's what can just pure cash flow for yourself coming in. Now, of course, this will have higher depreciation. You'll see here, it has around about 16 grand worth of depreciation as well. But that's not going to be enough to pay zero tax on that income. You will pay some tax on this money. So if you had a $26,000 pre-tax cash flow, so after expenses, you're getting 26 grand, you're going to have to allow just down the bottom here for around 3 grand worth of tax. It's still not a bad return. You're still getting 22, 23 grand worth of cash flow coming in. And that's just as important to make sure you buy this. This style of property has to be bought in the right area. You can't buy these anywhere. You've got to go where the demand is for it. So $570,000, $1,150 in rent, and gives you huge return around $400, $500 a week. You don't want to have your portfolio full of these style of properties. Like everything, guys, you got to diversify. Got to diversify with growth, cash flow, growth, cash flow. Even diversify investments like asset classes. Like I've got clients that do some share trading. I was speaking to a client the other day, just done quite well out of cryptocurrency. It's not for me, but he's done really well with some share trading. But it's all offshore. He's quite smart. He's doing it all overseas. He hasn't paid tax on it yet. So when he brings it back over here, then you'll get hooked with the tax from the Australians. Okay, so I've got a couple of questions, which is fantastic. All right, so Leanne, who does Leanne, you don't need depreciation. You've already got that. That's that BMT and Associates report we do for you guys. All right, now Corey. So depreciation consists. So Corey's got a question here. Why is the depreciation consistent figure over a 10-year period for the dual key property? The first example varied. There's two parts of depreciation there, Corey. You've got depreciation on your building and one for your fittings. So your building is the one I'm guessing we're talking about here. Let me try this here. So that is because that depreciation figure here, that'll last you for 40 years. So this top depreciation, it's not just the 10 years, it actually goes for 40 years for the duration basically of your portfolio, really. If, most people don't start their portfolio till they're at least 20. So yeah, that's basically how we do that one there, mate. I'll just go back to the dual key, sorry, Corey, because I just want to see if it's different. No, it's just that top row again. So it's just that top row. It's the division that that goes back towards the construction cost of your property, but that'll last there for 40 years. So any properties you have in place now with depreciation reports, the construction cost of the property with this depreciable item, that'll be the same for the next 40 years there, Corey. Hi, Heather. Hi, Michelle. You've all joined as well, which is fantastic. If you've missed the beginning, guys, feel free to skip back once it's over. I'm pretty sure you can skip back once we're all over here. Now, guys, feel free. Now, that's about it for me tonight. I just wanted to show you some important areas that you can uncover some cash flow. Like I said to you, next week I'm going to go through a case study. So from one of my 15-minute calls last week, we uncovered that this person could actually buy property comfortably. He didn't know he could do it. It happened on a regular basis. So I thought, I've asked his permission. He's going to allow me to do a case study on him and just show you some ins and outs of what I'm proposing for this person to do, especially because he doesn't have his home base, as far as I'm aware. I've got to have another quick call to check a few things, but to my knowledge, he doesn't have his home base. So that's different. So that's what we call a rent investor. And a lot of people who live in Sydney, especially in the CBD area, they're never really going to want to buy an apartment there. They're going to buy investment properties outside that area and live from the rental income from those properties instead. And I have a lot of people actually that are happy to rent in retirement. I'm not, definitely not. But I don't mind the idea of rent vesting. I don't do it, but I would do it if the right property come up. All right, guys. So do we have any other questions? So feel free, please fire me some more questions, guys. We've only had a couple so far tonight. So Jesse's going to pop in here in the comments just a 15-minute call link. Like last week, I had a couple of calls from people, just some generic questions for them. You click the link, go straight to my calendar. And if Jess can't do it now, we'll pop it in later. And basically you book it in, we just chat for 10, 15 minutes to see if I can help you or not. Sometimes I can just chat with someone for 10 minutes, give some small bits of advice that can just change direction of their portfolio, which is good. All I want for everybody who's listening tonight, who's going to watch this video over the coming weeks or days or whatever it might be, is to have a profitable portfolio and to not rely on government subsidies, not rely on the government for anything. The government's great. Australia, we live in a great country where the government does support us, but you can't live off that. Yeah, so Jess has just put in that 15-minute calendar link. So feel free to click there if you have any questions. But guys, just remember, if you know anyone else, I'm just going to stop sharing my screen. Guys, what I want you to do, just remember, keep in mind that if you have any other family, friends, kids that want to learn about property investment, we've been putting these case studies, different examples, different structures. We're going to be doing that every Tuesday night. I'm not sure about Christmas because I don't know if anyone's going to watch me over Christmas period, but I'm quite happy to do it. But basically what I'm here for is to just want to teach you the ins and outs of property investment. Now, that might not give you enough confidence to do it in your own right, but if you come across the right people that can help you put it in place, you'll be much more confident with the knowledge that you're going to gain that I'm going to share with you, because I don't want anything back for it. I just want to see everyone get ahead financially and just basically share my experience. So if you do know anyone else, they can join into Property Hub at any time. You guys all know where it is. You can invite them to it. And yeah, all right. Yes, Heather, it's not far along now. We've got prime example there with Heather's comment. She's got one of the dual keys under not quite yet under construction, but that'll come in place next year, which will bring fantastic cash flow into their household. Same thing, guys. You've really got to get stuck into the property market, whether you're doing it yourself or you're doing it through an advisory company. It's a perfect time to do it. There's really never a wrong time to buy a property, but it's what you buy and when and where. They're probably the most important factors when looking at building your portfolio. But guys, sorry, I hope I haven't talked too much to you tonight, but feel free, you can post comments. I know Leanne posted a question there a couple of weeks ago about commercial and rent to rent. Rent to rent we'll be discussing a lot next year. I do a fair bit of that. And also commercial as well. I will have a night on commercial real estate. I'm not a huge fan of commercial, but I do want to break it all down for you guys so you know what the do's and don'ts of commercial are when it comes to property investment. So guys, thanks again for watching again tonight. I'll see you again next Tuesday. Enjoy your week. I am led to believe we're going to get hit by a storm in a minute here, so I hope the internet doesn't drop out. But guys, thanks again for listening tonight, and I'm really looking forward to educating everyone over the next months, weeks, years. I really want to see everyone grow financially. So guys, thanks again. I'm Wayne Jessup, the Property Bloke, bringing real property, real strategies and real results to the everyday Australian. Thanks again, guys, and have a good evening.